Margaret, what makes that meeting so interesting was that it comes right on the cusp, on the eve, actually, of an EU summit, European Union summit in Brussels tomorrow, where leaders are going to talk about beefing up the mechanism they've got, the arsenal of tools they've got for fighting the sovereign debt crisis. But Niall Ferguson, first of all, he had a one-on-one interview with, or discussion with Angela Merkel and with Prime Minister Zapatero. What did they want to know? What did they want? What was your takeaway from the discussion that you had with them this afternoon?
I think there are two key things about this meeting. Number one, it's a German seal of approval, a vote of confidence in the measures that have been taken by Prime Minister Zapatero to put a firewall between Spain and the other so-called pigs, the South European countries in trouble, like neighbouring Portugal.
And have they succeeded?
I think they have succeeded. I mean, these reforms are serious. They represent a real breakthrough in terms of both fiscal and labour policy. And the other aim, I think, is to try to move the discussion away from sovereign debt and banking problems into the realm of structural reform, and that means labour market reform, which is really the core of this crisis, the divergence between German and South European labour costs.
Now, Angela Merkel, tomorrow at the EU summit, is going to present her competitivity pact. Now, this sounds like the drumbeat of fiscal federalism that you've been talking about, saying that that's something that is needed here in Europe. Is she going along the right lines to get to that stage?
I think this is actually an alternative to fiscal federalism. If the Europeans could really create an integrated, dynamic marketplace for labour, where there weren't huge differentials between German and South European labour costs, then the need for transfers for fiscal federalism would actually be reduced. And I think that's why she's gone down that route, and she obviously has strong support from Prime Minister Zapatero in doing that.
Let's just boil it down. After your discussion with these two leaders, how do you feel about the future of the euro? Are you more positive? Are you more pessimistic?
I think the euro has to survive because it's in Germany's interests, and the German voters are gradually coming to see that they can't afford to let this fall apart, because they would be hit not only by a stronger exchange rate if they had to go back to the Deutschmark, but also by a real problem in their banking sector, because they're not, in a sense, they've got a banking problem that hasn't been talked about very much in the Landesbanken, and it's the exposure of these Landesbanken to South European debt that's really at the heart of this crisis. So the outlook for the euro has definitely improved today, and I think if they succeed in building this firewall between Spain and the smaller South European countries, not to mention Ireland, then the crisis may really abate.
Neil, from one crisis to really another. North Africa, Egypt. You were just saying to me, and please explain, what is the linkage between the financial crisis, the sovereign debt crisis, and the blow-up that we're seeing there at the moment?
A couple of years ago, I said in an interview, there will be blood. In the wake of all big financial crises, there are political crises, and especially in the kind of middle-income countries that get hit hard when food prices go up. You have to ask yourself why commodity prices all across the world have doubled in the last year or so. The answer is massive monetary easing, not least in the United States. The Fed prints money to try to get unemployment down in Michigan. What happens? Commodity prices shoot up in the emerging markets. That's the law of unintended consequences.
So you're saying the Fed has taken the wrong policy?
Well, I thought QE2 was a step too far. I argued at the time that it would have a bigger impact on commodity prices than on unemployment in the US. I think that's been vindicated. And now we see what is nothing less than a revolution sweeping North Africa and the Middle East. And who knows where it will stop?
You predict further revolutions as long as food prices continue to remain rising?
Yes, it looks highly likely, and this could stretch all the way across the greater Middle East as far as Pakistan. The only people who are really proof against it are the rich oil exporters who can pay subsidies to keep food prices down in their countries. But that isn't an option if you're Egypt, and it certainly isn't an option if you're Pakistan.
Niall Ferguson, thank you so much for coming out to talk to us after that meeting. Margaret, back to you.